What do you call a kid who whines and yells and doesn't listen? Kid who doesn't respect authority. Well, I'll tell you what you call that kid. You call that kid me. I'm sure a lot of you were thinking you call that kid bad, but you see, me and bad were sort of interchangeable terms when I was growing up. I lied, I cheated, I skipped school. I think my kids are gonna watch this, so I won't give them any more ideas, but basically, you name it, I did it. And so it wasn't really difficult for the adults in my life to describe me. If destiny equals bad behavior, and bad behavior equals a bad kid, destiny equals a bad kid. Case closed, problem solved. Destiny is a bad kid. And I heard that every single day, all day long, from my parents, teachers, relatives. All amazing people, by the way, if you're watching, I love you so much, but they unintentionally gave me my first label. The bad kid. And you know what? After a while, I just stopped fighting it. I went from being the bad kid to the bad teen, and eventually the bad adult. And it sucked. It really sucked, y'all. I know the movies want us to think that the villains are living these glamorous lives with secret layers and witty comebacks. No, that's not the case. It's actually really lonely for the villain, and it's really unstable. We don't have long-lasting friendships. We don't have the best relationships, and we don't always get the best opportunity. So I said, you know what? This is some BS. I want what the heroes get. I want the bestie. I want the relationship. I want the new car. So I did what they tell you to do when you're trying to change your life. I read a bunch of self-help books. And it actually worked for a while. I was forming new habits. I was accomplishing my goals. I was learning to speak with more compassion and empathy. And for the first time in my life, I thought, you know what? I'm a good person. No more bad kid, no more villain. Destiny is a good person. Yeah, that is until my toddler had her first grocery store tantrum. All that compassion and empathy and blah, 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 that went out the window. And if you've experienced this before, then you know exactly where I'm going with this. You got a screaming toddler on a dirty floor, got a bunch of judgy eyes staring you down as the aisle starts to cave in. It's terrible. And before I knew it, I started behaving like the bad mom. I grabbed her, I picked her up, started doing that talking through your teeth thing that only parents know how to do. Stop it right now. I started shaming her and blaming her. What's wrong with you? You're being ridiculous. It's not that serious. I started treating her like the bad kid. All my years of cleaning up my act, and there I was throwing an adult tantrum on aisle 6. I felt so defeated and so discouraged, and I just hung my head as I cried my way to the register. But all is not lost, because I realized something very important that day, and it's this. Labels, especially those that we place on our children, are insidious. Not only do they keep us from having compassionate relationships with them, but they can keep them from having compassionate relationships with themselves. Too often, we teach our children to identify with their behaviors rather than seeing the truth of who they are as separate from those behaviors. And that's actually a really important distinction. It's the difference between saying you are a bad kid and you're not following directions. It's a lot easier to learn to follow directions when you don't believe that you're inherently defective. And so that's why I believe that what we call our children can shape their destiny. And the labels we give them dictate our expectations of them. And our expectations of them dictate the way that we teach, treat, discipline, and communicate with them. They dictate the way that we love them. I'll put it like this. When you believe that a child is bad, you treat them as if they're bad. And when you treat them as if they're bad, they start to believe they're bad. And when they believe they're bad, they continue to behave as if they're bad. And that is how the bad kid becomes the self-sabotaging adult. And it's actually not just with negative labels either. I want you to consider what would happen to the child that hears, "What's wrong with you? You're supposed to be the smart one," every time they make a mistake. We've seen that play out in adulthood. It's the person whose internal worth is based on their success and their achievements. But what happens when they fail? What happens when they don't live up to the label? Well, oftentimes they're consumed because they can't separate that internal worth and identity from their external success. And a lot of us do that, don't we? When we're scared, when we're stressed, when we're angry, our brains and bodies are just reactivated by the emotional memories that we're trying to run from. And that is why I lost it in the grocery store. And it's also why we really got to drop the labels. How do we do that, though? Well, we start by focusing on our children's internal experiences before we respond to their external behaviors. Y'all, we still gonna correct them, we're still gonna discipline them, but we're gonna do that second and more mindfully and with more information. In their ugliest moments, rather than labeling them, we're gonna ask ourselves, what is my child experiencing right now? When they're struggling to apologize to their sibling, rather than labeling them as rude, we're gonna look at the shame and the embarrassment beneath their behavior. And we're gonna speak to those emotions before we teach them accountability. When they're struggling to sit still, rather than labeling them as out of control, we're gonna meet that need for movement, and we're gonna send them outside, y'all, not to time out. Now, when I realized this, it was huge, and it completely shifted the way that I see my daughter's bad behavior. And so if it's all right with you, I'd like to share what I did the next time she flopped like a fish. So, first, I just connected with her. I looked at her, and I got down on her level. I heard the pain in her voice. I saw the tears in her eyes. I got present. I want you to consider what getting present with your child would look like. Is it putting your phone away? Is it actually listening when they tell you about their day? And while we're at it, what would getting present with yourself look like? Is it taking a good deep breath in the morning before you reach for your phone? Is it driving home in silence? Is it prayer? Is it meditation? It's a really important question, because presence is the quickest route to connection with our kids and with ourselves. And so after I got present, I got curious. Maybe this isn't manipulation. Maybe I can give her a more generous assumption. Maybe this is sorrow or disappointment or frustration, all emotions that I'm familiar with. And that thought instantly softened me. And then my calm presence softened her. And she said, "Mommy, I'm so sad. My toy broke in the car, and now I can't have any candy. I never get what I want." And because I was present, I was able to tune into her experience from a place of empathy rather than judgment. And I said, "Baby, that makes sense. What you're saying makes sense to me." When's the last time you told your child that they make sense? That their feelings and their emotions are valid? We often don't. Luckily, though, that day I did. And so once I validated her experience, she, my kid, at 3, was ready to move into problem solving and collaboration and cooperation, not because of force or manipulation, no bad kid label, no bad mom label. She was ready to consciously choose a better behavior because I focused on her internal experience. And here's what's really cool. She's 5 now. And she is learning to focus on her internal experience and communicate it with her words rather than her behavior. And that is the foundation for emotional intelligence, something I definitely did not have as a kid. And so here's the thing. We can teach our kids effective, positive, productive behaviors while keeping their self-esteem intact. And we can do the same thing for ourselves. When the false labels come up, rather than running from them, we can sit with them. We can get curious. We can get information. And we can use that information to do what my daughter did in the grocery store and more consciously choose the behaviors that follow. So here's my last question for you. What do you call a mom who connects before she corrects, who listens more than she talks, and who is more curious than she is judgmental. That's me now, most of the time. I don't know if I'll ever completely drop my bad kid label. I'll probably always be a little spicy. I'm okay with that. But I am confident enough to tell you this. You are not a label. Our kids, our partners, even our parents, okay, they're not labels. And if we want to move away from the projections and the prejudices that keep us divided, then we're going to have to get down on the grocery store floor. We're going to have to hear ourselves. We're really, really going to have to hear our kids. And we're going to have to start seeing them as whole, complex, layered beings, not labels.